Yeah, again, welcome everybody to Angular Philippines, and this is our fifth meetup, I guess. Yeah, thank you for joining us once again for Angular Philippines. And right now, this evening there in the Philippines, this is actually a very exciting for us, a very exciting event, especially for me, because we have a very expert in Angular tonight for as our speaker. But yeah, before we move on to our expert speaker this evening, so I will just have a very very short introduction for Angular Philippines, especially for the people who are quite new in our community. So I'll just share my screen for a while. All right. Nice. All right. So once again, welcome to Angular Philippines, guys. And as I have mentioned, this is our fifth meetup for this year, and I'm very happy that we have a lot of experts that are joining with us, especially all over the world. And yeah, it's really nice to have our experts or different experts around the world, no, to share their expertise, um, especially in Angular. So sa mga bago or for the new people that are new here in Angular Philippines, so I just want to introduce you what our community is and or what is the mission of our community. So Angular Philippines. So welcome again. So we are a PH Tech community since 2016. And Angular PH is a non-profit tech community who are passionate on organizing events such as meetups, seminars, and conferences here in the Philippines for developers, students, and professionals. No? So basically, our community, our mission is always to share knowledge, to share our expertise, and also organize events, free events, seminars, and meetups for students, especially, and also for professionals as well. No, so everyone is welcome to join our community. So we are founded on year 2016 by a group of developers where they share the same advocacy in building an organization which has a goal to help other developers in using the latest technology, not just related to Angular. No, so we are also a diverse community. Our main expertise is Angular, but we are also experts in other fields in the technology, web development, mobile development, and DevOps, and also even AI. So we, as leaders of the community, we also share our expertise in different fields in IT. And on year 2016, we started like for only 10 developers, 10 or less than 10 developers, and these leaders are sharing the same advocacy by just simply sharing our knowledge, and right now our family is growing, our community is growing, and you are welcome to join our community. And for our community leaders, um this is our currently active community leaders in the community. And if you are interested to join as a community leader for our community, so please feel free to message one of our leaders or even me, if you are interested to join and be part of the growth of Angular Philippines. And right now we are already 6,000 members in our group. So not just on Facebook, but we are also active on Discord as well. So if you have some questions, if you have some inquiries about your career, about what Angular, what are the latest trends in the Philippines, especially, so you are free to join. And we have some past events. So since we are already in the tech community for almost 10 years, so we already have a lot of past events that we have organized and that we have maintained as well. So we have monthly meetup, just like this one, what we are doing right now. We have partnered with different communities such as AWSC Club, Education PH, and also other tech communities that are currently active in the Philippines. And we also have a face-to-face meetup in partnered with Microsoft PH. I think that um, this occurred last year, but we are also planning some face-to-face meetups as well in the next years. Also, we have some several speaking events just like Stack League, Angel Hack, Steava, um, GDSC PUP. and GDSEFU Alabang, and other communities are as well. No, so we have several speaking events that are partnered with local and international communities as well. And um, we are still doing some podcast for Angular as well. So this happens like twice or thrice a year, and we are still building our website, which has a lot of features that will be for the members. And lastly, for the upcoming events, so we are still conducting the Angular monthly meetup. Also for the speaking events that are partnered with local and international communities such as Stack League, Angel Hack, Steava, and other school communities. And as I've mentioned, so we are still doing the podcast and also doing some improvements and new features for our new portal. All right. So our website is actually live. So this is our internal project, but we are still continuing to improve it, as I have mentioned a while ago. So just visit angular-ph.org, and you can actually see our previous and current events that will be happening in this year or next year. And we are continuously updating our website. So yeah, if you want to join Angular PH, right now portal.angularph.org is not available, but we will be soon. Um, we will be soon releasing the Angular PH portal. We are just improving some things, but if you want to join our community, you can just go to facebook.com/groups. You can also go to Angular Philippines. You can just search in Facebook as well. It's easy to find our community, and you can also join our Discord. And I will be dropping this presentation also in the chat, so you can also have a look on the links that we have for our community as well. And I think that's basically it. So I'll stop sharing my screen. All right. So yeah, I think this is it, right? So it's now time for me to introduce our speaker for this evening. So yeah, I don't want you to miss this, guys, because this is a very good topic for us, especially it's now the era of AI. And by the way, so for the era of AI, and also this is one of the experts and well known in the Angular community. So our speaker for tonight is he is under the leadership of Angular Architects.io. He supports companies with the implementation of web-based business applications with Angular. And at the Angular seminars he combined his profound knowledge of Angular, for which he has recognized by Google as a Google Developer Expert. With his experience, which he worked as a team leader in the field of software development, as a professor at the University of Applied Scientists, and as an external member of the Angular team. So he has also completed several part-time degree programs, including IT and IT marketing in Graz, Austria, computer science in Hagen, Germany, and software architecture in Cork, Ireland. Additionally, he engaged in 4 semesters of training in the field of education. And also, he has published books at O'Reilly, Microsoft Press, Enhancer, and writes for the Heist Online, Windows Developer, and the Java Magazine. He also regularly shares his knowledge at different international conferences. So, please welcome to our um, virtual stage, Mr. Manfred Steyer. Hi.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for accepting our invite to be a speaker in Angular Philippines, and the community is very happy to have you as well.
Yeah, sure, sure. I mean, it's a big pleasure to speak at the Philippines. Remotely is fine. Next time I will try to be on site. So let's see.
That would be nice. That would be really nice, and I will be in the Philippines also if you will be talking there. So it will be really great for the community to meet you in person.
Sounds great.
All
Sounds
right.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. The floor is yours, Manfred. You can share your screen and start your presentation as well.
Awesome. So I'm sharing my screen now, and here we go. So it's all about agentic AI in the front end, and for this we need open standards. And just to give you an idea what this is about, oops, just to give you an idea what this is about, it is about things like dynamic dashboards the user can describe, and then it's rendered for them. So it's a highly dynamic UI, but sometimes it's also just about a chat where the user is asking a question, and then the answer is perhaps not only text, because no one wants to see a wall of texts, but instead an interactive component that can be used, and it leads to your result. So not the text is result, not the chat is result, but what you see here in the main working area. Those are just two examples of what I want to show you today. And to not theorize about all of this, let's switch into an example for this, which is here my flight application. It's a basic application I'm using for a lot of workshops and sessions I'm doing. And it's really as simple as possible, but also as complex as needed to show all those concepts. One thing I have in there is dynamic reporting. I can say, hey, I describe here a report I want to have, and then the system is thinking a bit, and then I'm getting service unavailable, which is not the plan. So let me quickly restart my AI server. And one more try. It's thinking a bit, it's executing, and then I'm getting here my report. It's about flights that are delayed and flights that are on time. Here, 2 flights have been delayed and 5 flights have been in time, and so on. So perhaps the user now says, yeah, but I want to see the percentages and please round. And now the same is generated, giving me percentages, 29% and 71%, sums up to 100. So it seems to be okayish at first glance, I guess. It's also rounded, so we don't have anything beyond the comma, beyond the decimal separation point. So another example I have here is a travel planner where I say I want to go from Graz to Rome. And then I have here a free text field for some references, something that cannot nicely be defined via a structured form. Something like stop over in Paris for dinner. And then let's see if it can give me some nice proposals. It's fetching some flights, it's fetching some hotels, and then it tries to bring everything together, also respecting my free text information here to a travel plan. Also here we see what's happening in the background. This is really important. Don't underestimate this because your user really needs to know what's going on in the background. Everything else creates fear and not a good UX because we all know that agents are really powerful. And when they are just doing something and not telling us what's going on, there is really a strange feeling, isn't it? So what did we get here? I have Graz, Paris. Then I can have dinner there, and in the next morning I can go on to Rome, and then after one day I'm going back to Graz. Nice travel planner. Everyone who needs to do something like this on a regular basis would really appreciate such an interface. Besides this, we have a traditional chat where I can ask, did I already book my flight to France? And then it's telling me, yeah, I'm looking up your flights. There is a tool called Find Booked Flights tool. In a real application, perhaps we would express this in a less technical way, but at the end of the day, the LLM is asking us, our agent, to execute a tool, and then with the results, it gives me an answer. And this answer is not just text, because no one wants to see text. This answer is more about a dynamic component. And then the result happens here. Some people also call this co-creation because I don't need to click all the times. I'm asking some questions and sometimes I'm getting my result here in the main window. So here I can upload the passport I have. Here it's the passport of Jane Doe. It's parsed, and then here everything is written into this form. Everyone who needs to fill out such forms knows that this can be quite relieving. So one more thing to show you. Here I'm asking search for flights from the metropolis of Graz to Madrid. And you see, one more time, the result happens here in the left window, where we are sent over to this left window, where this form is filled out, and where the search button is pressed for us, so that we get here some search results. Okay, so the big question is, how can we implement such systems? And at the end of the day, it's all about having an agent in the backend that can talk to tools, tools for fetching the booked flights, tools for booking flights, tools for canceling flights, and so on. And this agent is also communicating to an LLM. This is the brain of all of this. And sometimes the LLM will tell the agent, well, now please execute this tool, because to answer this question, I need to know about the booked flights of the current user. So the agent will execute the tool, send back the result to the LLM, and then the LLM can go on with articulating its answer, which could consist of the description of a component that should be displayed to the user. One thing people don't talk a lot currently, I'm quite sure this will change over the next years, is the counterpart in the front end. Because in the front end, you really have some kind of counterpart. I'm calling it here an agent client. It could also be called an agent gateway or an agent orchestrator. But nevertheless, how you call it, there is an implementation on the front end, and this implementation also knows about tools, client-side tools, tools like switch over to this route, tools like pre-fill this form, tools like please show now this and that component. And talking about components, we also have a catalog of components there with a lot of metadata. And both tools metadata, component metadata is sent over to the agent. It will forward it to the LLM. And so the LLM can not only decide for backend tools, but also for executing tools in the front end and for displaying some components out of a catalog. This makes it really, really dynamic. If you are wondering how this metadata is sent over, well, nowadays basically it's a JSON schema describing components with all their inputs when you think in terms of Angular and properties, and describing tools with all their parameters they are accepting. The thing is, when we look at the communication between the agent and the client-side counterpart, we need some protocol there. And usually this is something that is using HTTP. But it's not a traditional HTTP call, because, HTTP is about request, response, and then we are done. If we are ignoring some optimization techniques in there since version 1.1. But basically on a logical level, it's request, response, we are done. However, when we are talking to an agent, it's more than just request response. It's more like doing a request, then the agent starts working together with the LLM, and then the agent sends down some information about what's going on there. Some progress information like, hey, I'm now calling this tool, I'm now looking up your booked flights, I'm now thinking, I am now trying to combine the hotels with your flights and so on and so forth. And at the end, the final information is, now I have a result for you. This result consists of some text and some components. Please now display it. So it's really more than request response. It's more like request, progress, 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 final response. And so the big question is, how can we establish this communication? over HTTP, how to communicate with the agent. And an even more important question here is how to prevent coupling to the server stack and to the LLM itself. Because for us front-end developers, it should not matter which framework is used in the backend. It should not matter whether they are using Spring AI there, or the Microsoft Agent Toolkit, or the Google Agent Toolkit, or LangGraph, LangChain. It should just not matter. And it's similar with the LLM. It should not matter whether there is OpenAI or Google Gemini used in there. So we really want to loosely couple to all those implementation details to concentrate really on the front end side. Another question that quickly comes up when we discuss topics like this here is how to support dynamic UI as an answer from the agent. So far, in all the examples we've seen, the agent can answer with text and it can select a component out of a catalog. But sometimes this is not enough. Sometimes we want to have more. Sometimes we want to have the agent to construct our answer. To construct our answer by stitching together different components, like a card here, an image there, so that the answer can be really dynamic. Because if we could 100% foresee what the user wants to have, we would not need an LLM. Then a traditional form would be good enough, wouldn't it? And this is what I want to explain today. For this, I have prepared several things on my agenda. I want to get started with agentic UI. Then I want to show you how to use AGUI for the communication with the backend and with the agent there. This is kind of our backbone that bundles all the information we need. And on top of this, we use A2UI that allows us to create a highly dynamic UI, where the LLM can answer with a highly dynamic UI by stitching together primitive components like a card, a table, an image, and so on. Also, of course, we have to speak about MCP. There is quite a hype about MCP. It was one of the first protocols that have been really used intensively. And one play mode of MCP is MCP Apps that also provides us with visual tools for the client side. We also will look into this and we will see some very interesting differences between MCP Apps and A2UI. Both somehow, not completely, but somehow solve similar issues, but in completely different ways. Before we start, let me introduce myself. I am Manfred. I'm a trainer and consultant for Angular, and I'm focusing on Angular in the enterprise. In this role, I'm helping of companies around the globe with using Angular for large-scale applications. I and my nice colleagues do trainings there. We are doing consulting there, reviews and development. Besides of this, I'm also quite connected to the Angular community. And I live in Austria. I do a lot of stuff in Germany, and I'm always happy to work together with people around the globe. For instance, we have several customers in Poland, but also in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and in other parts of Europe. Sometimes we are working together with customers in the US or in Asia. Okay, cool. So let's get started. Let's talk about a protocol for the communication with agents. And as mentioned before, it's all about this communication there, where we need to talk to an agent via HTTP. And of course, as it is about getting progress information, people often use server-sent events on top of HTTP or WebSockets. But the thing is, and I already mentioned this before, we need a protocol for this kind of communication to abstract the server stack. We do not want to be dependent on the server stack, on which framework is used there, like LangChain, LangGraph, Spring AI, Microsoft stuff. We don't really care. We want to abstract this. And we also want to abstract the LLM away. We need streaming events. We already discussed this. And at the end of the day, it should be transport agnostic because some people might want to go with server-side events. Other people might want to go with WebSockets. Another group of people might want to tunnel this protocol through another protocol. And so we want to stay flexible. It turns out there is already a protocol for this exact purpose. It's called AGUI. It's really a nice protocol. It's the Agent User Interface Interaction Protocol. And if you look to the SDK of this protocol, you see a lot of downloads. About 700,000 people download it on a weekly basis. And this is only the SDK for TypeScript. Besides this, there are SDKs for other languages like Java or .NET or, of course, Python. So this is only a tiny fraction. And obviously, you don't need an SDK, but having an SDK makes using this protocol a bit simpler for you. In theory, you could just implement the protocol by hand, tinkering together the right HTTP messages and events, but yeah, obviously having an SDK makes it easier for you. Here we have some supported integration, and this really gives a lot of confidence, doesn't it? Because it shows regardless of what you are using in the backend, you are covered. LangGraph, Microsoft Agent Framework, Google ADK, Mastra for TypeScript, quite a nice framework, or other stuff like Cloudflare and so on. And when it comes to SDKs for different languages, we also see everything is supported, .NET, Java, TypeScript, Python. When it comes to the Java integration, this SDK has a very thin layer on top for Spring AI. That's why I put Spring AI here and not to the slide with the frameworks before. It's part of the SDK. There are several message types for communicating with the backend, with the agent. And here, just to give you an idea of how it works, I show you 3 groups of those message types. In real, there are far more. But just to give you an idea, there is one group of message types for the current run. The run is everything that happens between my question and the answer I get from the model. Of course, my question, the answer, and all the progress information in between. Like I'm calling this tool, I'm calling that tool. In a more elaborated scenario, you might decide to split the request to several subruns that are in turn also split to several subruns. There is another group of messages which is about text messages. And then we have a group of messages for tool calls. When it comes to the run, it's quite simple. There is one message for, hey, I started this run. And another one for, hey, I finished this run. Now we are done. And then there is, of course, a message for, hey, there was an error. I am very sorry. When it comes to text messages, there is a message for, I'm starting a text message. And then there is a message for, now I have some additional content. This allows us to stream text down. The content is always appended to the current message. So you might get a content by word, so that word by word is streamed down. Or if you say, this is just too much protocol overhead, perhaps you might get just a message here by sentence, so that sentence by sentence or even partial sentence by partial sentence is sent down. And then when the message is done, when everything has been streamed down, there is this end message. When it comes to tool calling, it's similar. We start a tool call, there we define the name of the tool can be seen as the name of a function. And then we are streaming the arguments for this tool call to the backend, little by little. Like, hey, this is the first argument, a flight. This is the second argument, a passenger. This is the third argument, the preferences of the passenger. And when the entire tool call has been streamed to the backend, the tool call ends. However, not the tool execution, only the tool call. So here, the protocol takes the name tool call quite literally, because only the tool call ends, and so the tool execution starts. And once the tool execution is done, we are getting here a result message with the result value of our tool, like flights the user has booked or possible hotels, stuff like this. Let me show you a demonstration for all of this. So let's move into our application, and now let's reload this page here, and let's have a look into my network tab here, where I will start tracing stuff. So that I don't get lost, I put this here in another window, because otherwise it's that narrow. I'm getting claustrophobic. That's not nice. So now one more time, let's ask the agent, did I book for France? And I'm getting my answer. And now let's have a look how this looks like at the protocol level. So it looks like a ticketing agent has been called. And if we look here, it was a post call to this predefined URL. And if we look into the payload, then there we see I had the wish to use GPT 5.3. This was the wish from the client. This is only a wish. Sometimes it might make sense to give the client the possibility to select for a stronger or a weaker model, especially when you have an expert application like a coding agent. When the users are not that technical, perhaps you want to skip this wish. But anyway, it's just a wish. The backend can decide whether it goes with this hint or not. One thing that is a bit more interesting is the messages here. This is an array with messages we want to send up. And here my only message is, did I book for France? And besides this, there is a list of tools the LLM can decide to call on the client side. One tool is Find Flights, where I tell the LLM, hey, this is about finding flights for the user. Or another one is Get Current Basket. Return all the flights the user has selected in his shopping basket. So you see here a lot of different tools that can be called. When it comes to those tools, we have a textual description, which is really important because this is used by the LLM to find out when to call the tool. And if we look into the parameters, we have here a JSON schema. And this JSON schema describes the parameters the LLM can send to this tool, like from, which is a string, and to, which is a string. And also here we have a description. Airport of departure, airport of destination. So this metadata is now used as mentioned by the agent and so also by the LLM to decide when and with which parameters to call this very tool. This is how everything gets started. And then we are getting an event stream. An event stream where the agent in the backend is saying, hey, now I'm starting another run. And now I'm starting a first tool call. And now I'm ending this tool call. And here is the result. The result with the flights the user has booked, which is a server-side tool, because this is data we have on the server side. And then we have another tool call for tooling a client-side tool in order to display a component, like this component here. So let's have a closer look into this. I always like to look into those protocol messages because when you understand those messages, you really get a sound understanding of how it works underneath the covers. And this is something that's really vital, especially when it comes to troubleshooting. So this is here the right tab where we see all the JSON-based messages. Like run started, a first tool call was started. So let's copy paste this here into our IDE. Let's save this as temp JSON and let's format this. So this is already our first HUI message we are closely looking at. Type tool call start, then there is a tool call ID. It belongs to some other message, might be the run itself. And then we have here the tool call name, the find booked flights tool, which is in our case a server-side tool. And that's it. So the next step is to find out about the parameters we want to send to this tool. And for this, tool call args is sent. And here we see, well, for the tool call with this ID, which is the tool call we just looked at, we have some arguments, namely an empty object. In my example, we don't have parameters for this very tool. In this example, we are just getting all the flights in the future for the current user. Then we have tool call end. And then, this is a bit more interesting, we have tool call result, which tells us, hey, this is the result for the tool call with this and that ID. And here you have the result in the form of a JSON fragment. The user has this and those flights with this ID, this from, this to, and so on. Just give me a second. It was quite hot here, and I think I looked a bit too much into the air conditioner. I think this was not that a good idea. Okay, so one more time, we have another tool call. This tool call is for the tool, we will see it here, show components, that tells the client side now to display a component. And also for this tool call, I want to show you some arguments. Here, the LLM and also the agent is telling now the client side, display a message widget with this text here, and display a flight widget with those parameters here. Flight, this one, Graz, Paris, date, that one. So at the end of the day, it's about sending around JSON fragments. Now let's also have a little tiny look into the implementation of this. Of course, for the implementation, I use the HUI SDK. But honestly, the SDK is important and nice, but it is not enough. It's too much on the protocol level. So I needed to abstract it a bit, and that's why I wrote a resource, an Angular resource on top of it. And this resource is used here inside of my ticketing chat service. Here we go. So what you see here is my HUI resource. It's just a custom resource following Angular's resource API. And here I'm defining some key data, like the URL where to find the backend, but also other stuff like the model I'm wishing. It does not need to be the real model. As mentioned before, this is decided on the backend. I also say, hey, I expect that the server side has some memory about the conversation because the LLM is stateless. So the LLM always needs to get the entire chat, how do you call it, chat run, all the chat messages. And because I don't want to send around the entire chat messages time and again, here I'm just assuming that we have some memory in the backend. Usually server-side agent have something like this, and usually nowadays it can be implemented with 3 lines of code. That means I'm only sending the new messages to the server. This is the most important part here. I'm sending up some tools. Some tools like find flights. Here I have a name, here I have a description, and here I have a sort schema for the inputs like from and to. And now this sort schema serves 2 purposes. The first purpose is typing here the client side. My arguments here align with the schema. args.from, args.to. If this was from Monto3, I would have from 1.3. This is the first purpose. And the second purpose of the sort schema is we can derive easily some JSON schema from it. The JSON schema we have seen before that is sent to the model in the backend so that the model can decide when and how to call this client-side tool. In there we have a little implementation. Usually we are just delegating to existing services. Existing services like the router to route over to a specific route, or specific services like a store. In this case here, stores really pay off another time. Stores serve so many purposes. One purpose is to store the state. Another purpose is to help you with the unidirectional data flow. And now we see another purpose. It's about controlling your application. Controlling your application via an agent. Because a store is kind of a headless version of your entire application. And so we can easily call it from a tool that is in turn called by an agent. Okay, so what do we have else here? We have here a special tool that is called Create Show Components tool, and it takes some widgets. And one more time, those widgets here are just about metadata. Just about metadata describing your widgets, a pointer to your Angular component. This Angular component has inputs, properties, that should be populated by the LLM when calling it. And those inputs are also described by a schema here. It has 2 inputs. There is a first input, could look like flight inputs.required, something like this. And a second input could look like status equals input.required. So it has 2 inputs. The first one is from the flight schema. The second one is an enum with booked or other. And if we look to the flight schema, one more time, it's an object with properties, data types, and a textual description. And one more time, also this is sent over to the LLM, so the LLM can decide when to request the creation of this component with which inputs. So basically it's that. This HUI resource, which is nothing else than a nice convenience layer on top of the HUI SDK, also has some nice properties. Like here we have the value, which is a combination of all the chat messages you have. And there you also have a method send message, where you can send here a message like, did I book France in the role user? And that's it. So all I need to do now is to sending up a message, a request, and to getting the results I'm getting back and doing something with this. It's always the same, regardless whether it is a chat assistant or something else that takes more structural data. It's always the same, sending data upwards getting some progress information back, displaying the final result. Okay, so let's also have a look. That's the wrong window. Let's also have a look into my template that is constructing the chat. What you see here is I'm iterating through all my messages. Those are the messages that come out of my resource, of my chat resource. And I just iterate all of them. And I'm saying, hey, when there is some content string, some textual answer, display it with this helper component. It is basically taking the string and it is using a markdown parser to format the string. You know, sometimes an LLM might answer with markdown. Then I ask here my message, did you get some information about widgets to display? Did the LLM choose for widgets? And if this is the case, I'm delegating to this helper component that takes the metadata of the widget and displays it. This metadata of the widget is one of the things I have registered here when calling create show component tools tool with my AGUI resource. Something like the flight widget we have described before. So this helper will look up this widget, display it, render it into the middle of our application where we have this or that placeholder. And when it comes to tool calls, I'm also iterating here another property with tool calls just to inform the user, hey, this and that now happens. So that the user is not frightened, but the user should now know, okay, it is doing something meaningful on behalf of myself. It's now searching for my booked flights, and this is good because this correlates with the question I've asked, namely, did I already book France? Stuff like this. And that's it. So basically, it's about iterating your messages. Okay, now let's go dynamic. Let's go dynamic with A2 UI. There is this A2 UI protocol that is developed at Google, and it really enables you to give the user a rich, highly dynamic answer. Do not just answer with text or to answer with the name of a component to display. No, it gives you the structure of your very component. It gives you a component tree consisting of several more primitive components. And one thing that is really interesting here is it works across web, mobile, and desktop. So this is one of the architectural goals they had. And a second interesting thing there is that it works without executing dynamic code. So we don't get code tinkered together on the backend side that is executed in the front end. This would be a security risk, wouldn't it? No, we are just getting the description of components, a component tree, and then it's up to our application to render it. Work well, the client sends a request to the agent forwards it in the form of one or several requests to the LLM, and then the LLM answers with a description of a component, or to be more precise, of a component tree. Here it's called an UI surface. This can already be A2 UI, but if you say, well, A2 UI is too complex, you could also return a minimal DSL, a minimal JSON fragment that is describing components for your very use case. For instance, components for a dashboard. This DSL, this JSON could be simpler, easier to create, so you need less tokens in there and there are less ways to mess it up. But at least when you are sending the response to the client, it will be A2 UI. So it could be the original A2 UI, or it could be a transformation of your DSL into A2 UI. and then the client starts rendering it. This is how A2UI looks like. It's a bunch of JSON messages. And by design, it's really not just one JSON message, it's indeed a bunch of JSON messages, so that you can stream it down little by little. And you see here, there is a first component called root. Root is the first component by definition, so you have to call it root. And then you have children pointing to other components, like the headline and the name. And one more time, those components can point to further components, and so on and so forth. And this gives you a nice component tree. There are several components baked into A2UI. They call it the basic catalog. The basic catalog consists of text components that can be displayed as a title or just a body, as you see it here. It consists of other stuff like images, tables, columns, rows, cards, and so on. So you have some basic stuff in there, stuff you might already know from HTML. And you can extend your basic catalog. You can tell the backend upfront, and by the way, I'm capable of rendering a boarding card for a flight. You don't need to think about how to construct a boarding card together by using this and that primitives. Just tell me to render a boarding card with those parameters. Another thing that is quite interesting here in A2UI is you can embed your values like the title passenger, but instead of directly embedding values, you can also do data binding. And this is really cool. Google really implemented data binding for A2UI. How cool is that? So that means you can point to some object property. There are further messages where you can send down object properties like a passenger with a name, with an ID, with a flight status, something like this. And then you can really data bind to it. And this has several advantages. One advantage is that when this passenger is changing, you only need to send down the passenger message, the passenger data. You don't need to repeat your UI structure, your component tree, your UI surface. Another advantage here is, and that's why the next example is really pretty fast, you can cache here your component tree. If you say, well, the component tree will not change anymore, but the data will change. Then you take the component tree out of the cache, and everything else comes in form of data models and in form of further very tiny messages. Meanwhile, we have renderers for everything that's important, which is of course Angular, and other frameworks obviously like React or Lit for web components. And there is also something for the hybrid world like Flutter, and Android is planned. And in theory, everyone could implement an own renderer for further platforms. Of course, for us Angular developers, the Angular implementation is the most important one. And as both is implemented at Google, the two teams here really nicely work together. Some people from the Angular team teamed up with people from the A2UI team to implement a renderer for Angular. This has some nice characteristics. One important characteristic is that no foreign code is executed in the frontend. The frontend only gets a description of the UI. That's it. Only a description of the UI and nothing more. That means we don't need to fear that the AI has created some harmful code that is now executed. Another characteristic is we have really a strict separation between the structure and the data. Also the structure and the rendering. The structure and the data comes from the backend. The rendering is done by the client, and this ensures that our dynamic structure does not feel alien. It really is using our look and feel, our design system, our language in terms of colors, fonts, font sizes, and so on. So the rendering is really our task. And another characteristic is to react on events that are executed in there. We can set up some event handlers on the client. That means the client needs to know about some events that can happen and provide event handlers. Okay, so let's have a look into a demonstration for all of this. Let's go in here. Let's switch to the right branch. A2UI. Okay, I changed a bit here while talking. A2UI. Let's start the front end. Let's start the back end. And here we go. So what do we have here? Here we have my dynamic dashboard. The first one is a dashboard for people at the airport, displaying the next flights, displaying delayed flights, displaying some diagrams with delayed flights. So for those diagrams, I just told my agent to use this or that URL to get back an image with a diagram. I told it to send over the parameters that way and to get back all of this as an image. Of course, as seen before, I could also improve this by using some client-side component, delegating to something like Chart.js, then this diagram would be more interactive. This example here is a dashboard for a passenger. It displays the next flights, and it displays here the boarding cards and also all the next flights together with weather information. I have a search component here, and I see some possible cars to rent and hotels to book. One more time, some weather information. Also, I can click check-in, and then I'm sent over to the check-in form for this very flight. This is where I have to agree on the name of an event with the backend, and I have also to agree on some data that is sent alongside the event. And then, of course, the client needs to react when this event is triggered by A2UI. It's a bit like Redux, where we also need to agree on an action name and on a payload. Okay, now to show you how all this comes together, let's have a look one more time to our protocol level. And for this one more time, let me search for this dashboard. One more time, I have here my dashboard agent. I have several GUI messages, and one of them, you see a lot of tools have been called to get us this very dashboard here. Also here, I have a list with all the tools for the sake of transparency, weather forecast for this and that, and hotels for this and that. But at the end of this, we have here an activity snapshot. And if we copy this activity snapshot in here, if we save it as temp.json, if we format it, we see, yeah, this is here AGUI one more time. The type is activity snapshot. The activity type, it's kind of a subtype, is A2UI surface. And then we have a content with operations. And those operations in there are already A2UI messages. Messages telling me how to construct my dashboard. The first one is quite simple. It says create a surface. Like create a new area we can paint on. This is an easy one. It gets a little tiny, or perhaps not that tiny, surface ID. Then we have here another message that says update components. Please paint on this surface columns. Columns with a boarding stack, columns with a first card, a second card, a third card, and so on. So if we look to our example, this here is the boarding stack with two boarding cards stacked one above each other. Then this here is the next card, card 1, card 2, card 3, card 4, and so on. So if we look here to our boarding stack, we see it has two children, and those children are tickets. Tickets that are data bound to here and to there. Ticket widget. Column is baked in into the basic catalog. The basic catalog of A2UI. Ticket widget is already a custom widget I told the backend about that I can support it. Okay, so first message, create a surface. Second one, paint on it. The third one is also a message that tells us now we have some data for you. Data with tickets. Ticket 1, ticket 2, and so on and so forth. And now this entire ideas go on. It now goes on with the next data model and perhaps with some further stuff to display there. And those are indeed the three important messages we find within A2UI. Create a surface, update the components, but also update the data model. There is a fourth message type. It's not used in there. It's quite a simple one. It's delete the surface, clear the surface. We are starting over again. And that's it. And so we see how A2UI and AGUI nicely play together. So perhaps let me do a little experiment here. I say I don't want to have the next two flights. I only want to have the next flight for my next upcoming booked flight. Generate. Yeah, seems to work. Only one flight here. So let me do another experiment when it comes to my booked flights. A list of booked flights. No weather forecast. And now it's faking a bit. This is now not in the cache, so it takes some additional seconds. But now I don't have a weather forecast in there, just as a proof that this is indeed dynamic and not something I have hard-coded for this demonstration. Okay, there is a last protocol I want to tell you about. It's MCP Apps. MCP is quite a well-known protocol. It's all about tool calling. The tools we have used so far have been known upfront because they are tools from our system. But the idea of MCP now is to also incorporate tools of other systems, and for this we need a nice interface. An interface that tells us about the tools over there. An interface that tells us about parameters of the tools and what the tools are doing. And an interface that allows us to trigger those tools and to get back results. And this is defined by MCP. It's meanwhile used by a lot of clients out there. It can be also used by a lot of underlying protocols like standard in, standard out, HTTP, server send event. It does not matter. It is one more time agnostic to this transport. There are SDKs for all the important languages out there. And when you look at the SDK for TypeScript, you have 34 million downloads a week, which is really quite a thing, isn't it? Which is really quite a thing. 34 million downloads a week. Besides MCP, we have another layer on top of it, which is MCP Apps. MCP Apps allows you to visualize your tool results. And for this, it provides client code. That means we download client code to the browser and execute it there. And this is funny now, because this is exactly what we wanted to prevent with A2UI. One of the goals of A2UI was to not send down dynamic code to the client, because we never know what we get from a third party or from an LLM. It would be a security risk. But here we are doing exactly this. And to do it safely, this here is executed in a sandbox. And we all know what I'm referring to when using the term sandbox in a browser context. Sandbox in a browser context is nothing else than, than an iframe. I'm very sorry. It's the only sandbox we have in there that works across all the browsers. It's an iframe. However, this iframe is nicely abstracted away by MCP apps. There is a protocol in terms of messages sent in and sent out from the iframe that allows us to discuss theming and the size of the iframe. Theming is important because the component in there should not feel alien. It should use our design language, our colors, our fonts and font sizes, and so on. That's why there is a theming layer with respective messages well defined by MCP apps. There are messages to discuss the size of all of this, so that the widget knows whether it's rendered as a little tiny dial or whether it's rendered full screen. And the protocol gives us further ways to define messages for simulating, events and properties. Because at the end of the day, we want to treat this dynamic thing as a widget that gets some properties with stuff to display and that sends out some events when something is happening. Let me show you an example for all of this here. For this, let me stop my server. Let's check out the MCP Apps branch, and then let's start the server. Okay, yeah, I always do the same mistake. This server is assuming another MCP server, and in my example, it's really hard when the MCP server is not there. So let's run the MCP server. This is an MCP server. Let's say it's from a business partner that is selling hotels or that is selling bookings for hotels. We don't want to deal with this, but we want to incorporate this because we are getting some money when we are selling their hotel bookings. So one more time, we are starting up our AI server. I'm going here into my chat and I'm saying, did I book France? And yeah, there is one flight to the city of love, to Paris. And now I say, I need a hotel there. And now the communication happens. It was just 3 lines of code in my backend, 3 lines of code that is telling the agent, hey, please use the tools from over there via the MCP protocol. This is the URL. You find the metadata over there. Please talk with it. And so my agent found out we can talk about hotels with this other side, with this third-party vendor. I got back some results when searching flights, searching hotels. And these results have been displayed in this widget that comes from the MCP server. Could be implemented with everything. Angular, React in this case, it's just vanilla jazz. It's just simple, tiny JavaScript. But it does not look completely alien because I use the MCP protocol to inform it about my theming. That I'm using the color blue here, that I want to have a blue button and so on. But basically, this here is really an iframe executing a widget via MCP apps. So also here, because we really want to know it, we look into the protocol level, and there we should also find an activity snapshot as before. But now this activity snapshot has the activity type MCP Apps, and the content also aligns with the MCP Apps protocol. The content says, please now display this widget here. It has this logical name. However, because it's connected to the server, to the MCP server with the internal name hotels, I can resolve this to a real URL. A URL that looks like HTTPS, in my case localhost 3002, something like this. This tells me what to display. Then it tells me about tool input. This is the input parameters the tool has been called with. In my case, I was searching for hotels in Paris. Also, this is sent down to the widget. The widget should know what I called the tool for. And then we are sending also down to the widget the result we got back from the tool, which is just a bunch of hotels with some image URLs. And that's it. Now we can use the MCP Apps SDK to create a widget, to send in those parameters so that everything is loaded in there, the right widget is loaded, and also to have this negotiation in terms of displaying the right colors, the right sizes, and so on. By the way, in order to implement this, we don't need to do anything extra because my implementation is already abstracting the entire communication with the MCP server. All we need is to register an MCP apps widget that takes care of all of this. A widget that is receiving the snapshot data, a widget that is delegating to the MCP apps SDK, a widget that is setting up the iframe and doing the protocol for negotiating about data, events, theming, and so on. So it's nicely abstracted away here. Okay, so if you like this presentation, there is more about this. There is an upcoming book I'm currently writing. It will be finalized after the summer holidays. And there is already a waiting list. If you subscribe yourself to the waiting list, you get an early bird discount and you will be under the first that are notified when the book is ready. So just sign up yourself now under agentic-angular.com. This is the first thing I wanted to tell you about. And the second thing is, if you don't want to read, but if you want to see all of this in action, there is this workshop I'm doing in July and very likely also after July. But for July, you can sign up now. So go to this website now and get your ticket for you, for your colleagues, and join me for 3 days to work together with this very topic. We will set up our server-side agent, but then we will abstract it because for us it does not matter with which technology it has been written. And then we will focus on the client side. We will use AGUI. We will create a lot of dynamic stuff with A2UI. We will use MCP apps. We will implement human in the loop patterns. We will talk about security and safety. So it's really a nice workshop. So make sure you will be part of this. So let me come to a conclusion. What did we see today? Well, we have seen that AGUI is the backbone of the communication with the backend, and it allows us to decouple from the server-side stack. We have seen that AGUI also provides events for communicating with the client, And some of those events could also tell the client to display a component out of a catalog. Then there is a 2UI. We are using it on top of a GUI for creating dynamic UI surfaces, tinkering together several components dynamically to give the user a very appropriate answer. Not just a text wall, but some components. And then there is MCP Apps for visualizing the results of tools we got from third-party vendors. And all this together builds a nice story for implementing a system where the client is loosely coupled and the client can answer with some nice components, not only with text. So that's it already. You find a lot of further material on my blog and follow me on social media to stay in contact. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you very much, Manfred, for that wonderful talk. So yeah, your talk is very very cool. It's like I was watching a live masterclass
Oh,
for
wow.
AGUI. Yeah, so it's very cool, right? Yeah, and this is our first time to have an Angular talk with AI, so it's very interesting. Um, so yeah, personally also I'm using AGUI, but I haven't used it with Angular. I'm using Copilot Kit,
Ah,
and
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's very interesting. But I'm also excited because I saw how you did it with the AGUI wrapper with Angular, and it's very interesting and it's very easy to implement. So yeah, nice. I've learned a lot. Even me, I've learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure all of our viewers have learned a lot as well on your talk. So yeah, if you have any questions, guys, for Manfred, so you can actually comment. But yeah, where can they also contact you, Manfred, if they have some questions or if they're interested on your other resources as well?
Yeah, of course. So feel free to reach out on social media. We also have a contact form on our website, so both is fine. Just use the channel that suits you, and yeah, then we can start communicating.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, Manfred, because I don't see any questions right now on our stream. So I have a question for you as well personally. So, yeah, as a beginner, for example, so if they want to start working with AI or with agentic AI, so what do you like um what's your opinion or what's your recommendations to them, so on where they can start in building
Yeah.
their agentic AIs, for example?
So I shortened this path a bit for others
Yeah.
because I did all the research and I have written down all the stuff in my blog. So if you look to my blog, you find there an article series. Currently, it has 4 parts, but no, it has 7 parts, but it will get more parts. And this already guides you through everything we have discussed today. Of course, here I'm assuming you know a bit how an LLM works, but usually people got in contact with ChatGPT and so on. So I think in those cases, this blog article is for you. Just check it out, and
Mhm.
yeah, you find all those details in there.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Of,
Yeah.
of course, if you want to go a bit deeper, having a closer look to all those protocols is never a mistake because knowing what's going on underneath the covers always helps.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's totally right. I totally agree. Right, and yeah, I think this talk that you have also that you've given, I think it's also available right on your blog as well, so they can have a look. So yeah, another question, Manfred. Just curious, do you also have like a public repository, a same code that you can share publicly with the community so they can have it as a reference in order for them to build the agentic AI or basically play with it and experiment?
Yeah, totally. I can send you the link afterwards to GitHub, and then I can also send you the names of the branches where everything is in there I showed today.
Mhm.
And the same branches are also referenced in my blog articles.
All right. Yeah, nah, that's really great. Thank you very much, Manfred, for sharing your repository. And yeah, last, I think I think you already promoted your book and your upcoming book. So advanced congratulations to that one on the Angular with AI. So any other things that you can promote? Like, do you have any upcoming talks that is like online where they can watch?
Well, I will now start talking about this topic on a lot of conferences. I already did the weeks before that we had this conference break because of Easter,
Yeah,
and now the conferences are going on. So I think until the mid of next month, I'm at such conferences on a regular basis. And yeah, catch me up there and let's talk about AI in your Angular application.
nice. All right. Yeah, it's really nice to see you again in other conferences, Manfred. So yeah, once again, thank you very much, Manfred. So this is a really really cool talk for our community, and personally, me, I've learned a lot from your talk, and I'm pretty sure our audience has learned a lot as well. So yeah, thank you very much once again, Manfred, and I hope we can have you as a speaker again in our community.
Sure, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Manfred, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, once again, thank you guys for attending this evening talk. And this is not our last talk for this year. And also, we will be having another talk with this in this month. So we have two talks this month, and it's another Google Developer Expert. So we're not posting it yet, but it will be on June 27, and you can actually join that one for free online. And also, we also have some upcoming talks in July as well. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you had fun and you learned a lot in our session this evening. Good night, guys.